Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something super practical in project procurement.
Yeah, we're talking contract types.
Specifically, choosing the right one when maybe the project's path isn't totally mapped out yet.
That's a common scenario.
Ever wondered why? Sometimes a contract that seems a bit more open-ended might actually cost less upfront when things are uncertain.
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Exactly. So we're exploring the thinking behind cost reimbursable contracts today. And we're grounding this discussion in ideas found in the book, Project Management for Project Managers by Orlando Casabon.
Right, because when that project scope is, let's say, a bit hazy,
Uh-huh.
the contract choice really impacts those initial numbers. It often boils down to, well, who's holding the risk?
Okay, so walk us through that. If the scope is fuzzy, why lean towards cost reimbursable instead of just locking in a fixed price? Wouldn't fixed price feel safer?
You'd think so on the surface.
Yeah.
But put yourself in the seller's shoes for a minute. If I have to give you a fixed price for a job where I don't know all the details, all the potential problems,
You'd be nervous.
I'd be very nervous. So to protect myself, I have to build in a buffer, a contingency,
Yeah.
for all those unknowns.
Okay. So that fixed price isn't just the estimated cost. It's the cost plus a chunk
Mm.
for what if something goes wrong or changes.
Precisely. And that what if chunk can be pretty substantial. It bumps up the initial price tag.
Right.
Now, compare that to a cost reimbursable setup.
Mhm.
Here, the deal is basically the buyer pays the seller's actual legitimate costs
Okay.
plus, some kind of fee or profit margin.
So the seller isn't carrying all that risk of the unknown scope anymore. It's more shared.
Exactly. Or even shifted more towards the buyer, depending on the specific terms.
Gotcha.
And because that risk isn't solely on the seller's shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
they don't need to pad that initial quote with a huge contingency fund.
So the first number you see might actually be lower.
It often is, yeah. Think about getting a quote to fix a mystery leak in your house.
Okay.
If the plumber can see everything, easy fixed price. But if it's behind a wall, a fixed price will likely include extra for potentially ripping out more drywall, maybe finding rotten wood.
Right. All the potential headaches.
Exactly. Whereas a cost plus or cost reimbursable approach would be more like, we'll charge you for the time and materials we actually use plus our fee. The initial estimate might seem lower than the worst case fixed price.
That makes a lot of sense. But doesn't that mean with cost reimbursable, the buyer kind of loses control over the budget, costs could spiral?
That's a common concern, but not usually how it works in practice.
Ooh.
Good cost reimbursable contracts have controls built in. Things like requiring buyer approval for certain expenses, regular progress reports, audits even. The buyer stays involved.
So it's not a blank check.
Definitely not. It requires active management from the buyer's side, for sure.
Okay. And what about just like the standard costs? Project management time, office overhead, that sort of thing. Are those handled differently?
No, not fundamentally. Project management costs are part of the project, period.
Right.
And indirect costs like overhead, those are almost always factored in somehow, regardless of contract type. It's usually part of the negotiation.
Okay, so those aren't the deciding factor here.
Not the primary reason. One is initially cheaper than the other when scope is unclear.
So boiling it down,
Hmm.
the main reason a cost reimbursable contract might look less expensive upfront in an uncertain situation is simply because the seller doesn't have to bake in a massive just-in-case fund.
That's the heart of it. It's about where that risk of the unknown lives and how it gets priced initially. Less upfront padding needed from the seller.
That's a really clear takeaway. Understanding that difference, it could genuinely help you pick the right approach and potentially save some money at the start, or at least align the risk better.
Absolutely. It forces you to ask, just how much uncertainty are we dealing with here? And does a fixed price truly reflect the best value up front, given that uncertainty?
Yeah, a critical question for sure. Definitely food for thought for anyone managing projects.
Mm-hmm.
And look, if you want to really get a solid handle on all these project management concepts, including the different contract types and when to use them, we strongly recommend checking out Project Management for Project Managers by Orlando Casabon.
It's a great resource for this kind of detail.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for diving deep with us today.